And we're back. This is Hook and Ladder, week 11. Yeah, so interesting week. The separation, I think, it was seen by a lot of the teams. So let's go and get started.
Some things that were set, yesterday. So that's good. So we're getting down to it.
That's right.
Getting down to it.
There we go. Number 11, Louisville knocked off Virginia Thursday night, 31-24.
I watched most of this game. I feel so bad for Anthony Calandria, the quarterback for Virginia. The kid's good. He's, I think, a true freshman. A good athlete. Can throw the ball well. Just has this propensity for turning over at the most inopportune times. And, they played well. Louisville's a better team, but Virginia kind of hung in there for a while. Virginia's not a good team, but I like the fact that their best guys are their youngest players. So maybe next year or two they might do something. Maybe. Doubtful, but you never know.
Let's see. Friday night, you said you watched the SMU North Texas game.
Yeah, I watched a little bit of that game. It's kind of an interesting back and forth type of game. Nothing really of note. Just football's on TV, so I was watching it.
There you go. Moving right along. Ohio State knocked off Michigan State 38-3. You see any of this one? No,
I was watching the Michigan-Penn State while this was going on.
It was a high
just
noon.
Once again, the Big Ten. This is just an absolute garbage conference. I mean, Michigan's great, Ohio State's great. Other than that, there is nothing. And Penn State gave Ohio State a little bit of a test. Penn State gave Michigan a little bit of test, but we're stretching the word test. These really weren't tests.
Yeah.
Those two games were games that by maybe midway through the second quarter, it was pretty much in hand. It was just ugly. But I never felt, watching the Ohio State-Penn State game and yesterday's Michigan-Penn State game, midway through the second quarter, I never felt the game was in doubt for the team that was favored, Ohio State and Michigan.
Right.
There's nothing. The Big Ten has zero skill players out wide. There's some pretty good running backs in that conference. There's some really good defenses in that conference. But other than Michigan and Ohio State, there's nobody that can strike fear into the hearts of opposing defensive coordinators. These teams are in the top four easily and deservedly so, but let's not act like...
No, go ahead.
It kind of irritates me, and I'm not trying to shit on Michigan or Ohio State at all. I'm shitting on the rest of the conference. It's going to get a lot better when USC, Oregon, Washington, teams like that get in. It's going to be much more competitive. One of the reasons they're doing that, and they've done away with the divisions, is because the Western side is such a train wreck. I don't know, it's kind of dumb. The whole thing with Michigan, with the Harbaugh getting suspended while they're on the plane still. I think they were on the tarmac. And, the rumors on Twitter, and I don't know how true this is, it was a Twitter rumor, but, Michigan has thought about at least maybe leaving the Big Ten. That'd be a massive blow to the Big Ten. They could survive it. It would make it worse than it already is. I just don't think that conference is anything special. In my opinion, it's always been the second best conference, give or take, top to bottom. They might be like the Big 12, might have a couple of good teams in one particular year.
Right.
This particular year, the Pac-12 is the second best conference in the nation. But for years, we saw their, 3, 4, and 5 teams get absolutely boat raced in bowl games. And it's just, I just don't think it's good. The offensive showing from Penn State was terrible. We were talking to some guys at the Metallica show last weekend about this. These were Big Ten fans. We were discussing it with them last week, watching a lot of college. We watched a lot of college football last Saturday, even though we were not in town. We didn't have a show. Driving home on the day we're normally filming. We talked to a lot of Big Ten fans, and most of them were in agreement that your defense isn't going to get tested by most of these teams.
Right.
But, Ohio State took care of business. That's what the number one team in the country does. They beat the shit out of a team like Michigan State 38-3.
Dominating fashion. Georgia knocked off Ole Miss in dominating fashion. 52-17. A little slow start, but they really got it going. It
got a little dicey there for a minute. Ole Miss got the ball first, moved down the field. They went for it on fourth and short, like Lane Kiffin does. Went for it, got it, ended up scoring a touchdown that drive. Georgia matches it with a touchdown. Ole Miss gets the ball, they got a punt, Georgia gets a touchdown, Ole Miss gets the ball, they get a touchdown. It was almost like a back and forth, and after that last touchdown, Georgia was kind of like, all right,
Yep.
You know, and there were a lot of young guys. I think that first drive, there were 4 true freshmen in the game for Georgia, and 2 of the big plays on that first touchdown drive, they got victimized.
Right.
And once they settled down, there was video of Glenn Schumann, the defensive coordinator, on the ground with the whiteboard talking to the guys. Mm-hmm. Once they settled down, they clamped down, shut Ole Miss's offense, high-powered offense down, and they couldn't stop Georgia. No. Georgia could run it, they could throw it. I think they ran for like 290, 600-plus yards of total offense. Other than a tip pass pick at the end of the half, I mean, they could not be stopped.
Right. And not to mention, don't forget, most important, Brock Bowers is back.
Brock Bowers is back, had a couple catches and a touchdown. They didn't even really need him. Mm-hmm. And they clinched the East before they even played the game. Right. So that probably was a good weight off their shoulders. But I was very, very surprised with this outcome. I thought this was going to be a closer game. High scoring, but much closer. And Georgia's defense came to play.
Lane Kiffin pissed down his leg yet again.
I've shit on him before doing this, and that was basically the whole Alabama thing. He spends the entire week trolling Nick Saban and then completely pisses down his leg. I don't think he did that this game. No. He came out aggressive. The first 3 drives, they had like I think a second drive, there was a penalty, and then they got sacked, so they got behind the chains. But the 2 touchdown drives, he was aggressive. He was calling some really good plays. I just think eventually they got outmanned. Yeah. Georgia made some adjustments. Ole Miss didn't have the horses and couldn't counter, and then it just snowballed from there. We all know he's a great offensive mind. He's going to have a great offense. And he mentioned it after the game in the press conference. He needs to recruit better. Mm-hmm. That's got to be on the defensive side of the ball. Yeah. I mean, they can't stop anybody. Yeah. And, I don't think he had a bad game coaching. I think he had a good game plan. He just ran into a buzzsaw.
Yeah, well, it happens.
It would have been worse if he just trolled Kirby Smart the entire week. Mm-hmm. But he didn't. I think that's just him and Nick Saban, whatever they got going on.
Florida State knocked off Miami 27-20, and Florida State just keeps on.
That was a closer game. The score at 7 points.
Right.
That was a close game. Miami had the ball at the end of the game with an opportunity to tie it, and they just really bad clock management. QB went out with a broken arm, which was bad. You could hear the kid crying on the damn telecast. That was awful. And then the ESPN reporter's like right there, so she's like, "Oh, he's screaming in pain," I'm like, I can hear him through the freaking TV. It was much closer than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be a blowout. Mm-hmm. But these are the kind of rivalry games you just survive in advance. So I'm not going to talk smack about Florida State for not beating them worse. This is a huge rivalry game.
No. Miami had a lot of, people talking well about them early in the season.
Yeah, there's still a lot to play for.
Right.
Not so much now. I don't think Cristobal's done a great job there. They're buying a lot of their recruits, so they're going to get players. There's a really good wide receiver committed, and he doesn't give a rat's. He's going out to Miami. He just wants to get paid. If somebody else like Utah was going to offer him that much money, he'd probably go to Utah. But they're getting recruits through the NIL. They're just not seeing the results on the field, but just kind of like Virginia, just like Florida, Miami is also, their best players are the first couple of year guys. So we'll see what happens the next few seasons with them. Washington
knocked off Utah 35-28. I didn't see any of this one.
I watched a little bit of it, kind of flipping back and forth. Mm-hmm. I expected this game to not be as close, just like the Florida State-Miami game. But again, rivalry game. Utah's a solid football team. Mm-hmm. They're missing a lot of skill guys. They're missing their quarterback. I don't care how many games the pig farmer has started. He's no Cam Rising, but they hung in there. They played a really great game against Washington. And Washington, they're kind of playing with fire, in my opinion. They're destined to lose.
Yeah. But, we'll see.
They're a good football team, but they just haven't been playing very well the last handful of games. Mm-hmm. They kind of got a little lucky against Oregon, and since then, they've basically been playing with fire. Mm-hmm. We skipped over the Penn State-Michigan.
We did.
Shit show.
Okay. Michigan knocked off Penn State 24-15. Penn State, James Franklin he's I don't know what to say about it.
All right, so let's get to Michigan before we get on Penn State. Because I got something to say about that. I thought Michigan was going to beat them by 20. Mm-hmm. The whole Harbaugh thing, all the guys tweeting, blah, 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 all that jazz. It united them. Mm-hmm. Great. Penn State's a really good defensive football team. They're not very big, but they are physical, they're fast,
right.
And they really held Michigan in check. I mean, Michigan didn't attempt to pass in the second half because they couldn't handle the Penn State pass rush. In the end, Penn State had zero offense. They have no skill guys on the perimeter. Their running backs are mid at best. Quarterback, Drew Allar, threw for freaking 70 yards. And he's the passing leader of the game. You can tell that this is Big Ten football, right? 3 yards in a cloud of dust. It was an ugly game. Donovan Edwards scored a touchdown midway through the second quarter. And I was like, that's the ball game. Penn State's not going to be able to get to score. They turned the ball over on downs in the fourth quarter. The very next play, Blake Corum ran in for a touchdown. He had a good game, but I think most of the hay that he had came late. Penn State had them dead to rights for the most part, but Penn State couldn't capitalize offensively. I thought it was a fine game by Michigan. I have concerns about them in the playoffs. Do they have the capability to block teams like Alabama? Do they have the capability to stretch the field on teams like Georgia and Alabama with their outside wide receivers and tight ends? I'm not sure yet. That's a question unanswered. I watched the entire game against Purdue, and they threw the ball well, but you're playing Purdue. I don't think they've got any wide receivers that scare defensive coordinators in any of the playoff caliber teams right now. If you can stop them from running the football, you might win the game.
There you go.
But let's get to Penn State, because I was listening to Late Kick this week, and he was talking about James Franklin being overrated, and it was like, no, he's rated where he needs to be. Talking about all the games that he's been up against ranked opponents and his record in the ranked opponents. It's like a horrible record. I don't remember what it was, but it's really, really bad. But he's only been favored in two or three of those games, and he's won the games he's been favored in. So he's basically winning the games he's supposed to win, and losing the games he's supposed to lose to. And the first person that came to my mind was Mark Richt. Is James Franklin Penn State's Mark Richt? Are they a 10-2 team at best? Probably beat everybody on your schedule, with the exception of Michigan and Ohio State. Go 10-2. If things play out right with playoffs, you go to the Rose Bowl. If not, you're going to a Florida Bowl, New Year's Six Bowl, something like that. Is that what they are? I think that's what they are, and shit, man, it could be worse, right? Yeah. You could be an 8-4 team. If that's a 10-2 team, if your ceiling's 10-2, you might get lucky, lightning in a bottle, and go 11-1. But I think with James Franklin, Penn State's a 10-2 team, and that's not that bad.
No, it's not.
They'll probably fire him for this eventually, because they'll get sick of losing to Michigan and Ohio State. But
who's the next guy? Is the next guy going to be better?
Yeah, exactly. You're going to win 80% of your games.
There's a reason why Penn State is the third best team in that conference.
Look, they recruit fairly well.
Yeah, but they're not recruit as well as Michigan and Ohio State.
No, and I don't think Michigan recruits all that well either. The only team that I'm seeing land in multiple 5-stars and just loading up on skill position guys and defensive line guys is Ohio State. And you got to go against that every year. But I don't think 10-2 is all that bad. I really don't. I don't have any problem with James Franklin. I think he's kind of a weirdo, but I don't think he's a bad football coach.
No.
His record at Vanderbilt kind of proves his worth. Only guy really in history that could give Vanderbilt that kind of success, sustained success. Goes to Penn State. He's not bad.
No. I'll move right along. Oregon knocked off USC 36-27. Did you watch any of that?
I watched most of this game. Unfortunately, I fell asleep kind of at the end. Not really. What I watched of it really wasn't ever in doubt. Like they just pretty much kept about 2 scores ahead of USC. USC played well. I thought USC not having a defensive coordinator, just going back to basics and letting the players play and the athletes be athletes, it served them better.
Yeah. Moving right along. Texas knocked off TCU 29-26.
Again, just like Washington, Texas is playing with fire. They got Quinn Ewers back. He threw for over 300 yards, looked pretty good. They just look a little wonky to me. I still think they're elite on both sides of the football. A.D. Mitchell had a great game, had an amazing catch to ice it. They just don't look like they did earlier in the season.
Right. They don't look elite anymore.
Exactly. I think they're maybe just kind of, I don't want to say mailing it in, but that loss to Oklahoma should have shook them up, and it really hasn't. They should have lost. Well, not I say should have lost. The game against, I think it was Kansas, was way closer, and this one was way closer. TCU's not a good football team. you're a top 4 team in the country. You need to beat them by more. I mean, they're number 7, but I'm just assuming they're going to probably end up making the playoffs.
Possibly.
Because they'll probably win out.
We'll see. Alabama knocked off Kentucky 49-21. Alabama's getting together. I think Jalen Milroe had like 6 touchdowns.
He did. He had 6 touchdowns, 3 passing, 3 rushing, and they look like the team to beat now.
They look good.
You know, the eye test, they look like the best team. Them and probably Georgia right now.
Oregon State knocked off Stanford.
Yeah, I didn't see any of this, but hey, give it up to the Beavs.
62-17. DJ Ugliole.
Taking down them trees of Stanford. Good. It's always fun when Stanford loses football.
Absolutely. Mizzou knocks off Tennessee in a dominant fashion, 36-7.
This was the game of the day for me. I wanted to see this. I wanted to see if Tennessee could win. They were setting up a potential SEC East showdown with Georgia next week. Mm-hmm. Missouri's a good football team. Everybody by now should know they're a good football team. They got great wideouts. They have an excellent running back. They've got a very good QB. They've got good offensive line, and they got an elite defensive line play.
They played extremely well
They
last
played
week.
great football. The only weakness, in my opinion, is their secondary, which isn't that bad. They were underdog by 1.5 points, and I really thought Tennessee was going to get them. Yeah. I really thought Tennessee, with everything so firm to play for, they would get them.
And they didn't bother showing up.
And they didn't even, I mean, they got ran off the field. I mean, the score, they kind of got away from Tennessee at the end. It was a pick 6, but it really wasn't all that close. Mm-hmm. Schrader went for over 300 total yards, rushed for over 200, received for over 100, scored only 1 touchdown. Mm-hmm. They looked good. Brady Cook looked like a man possessed. He was throwing the football well. When they needed him to use his legs, he was doing it. Dude was cut and bleeding from multiple parts of his body, going to the injury tent. He played amazing. I mean, obviously, Schroeder, SEC Player of the Week, leads the SEC in rushing for a reason. That dude is freaking amazing. But Cook played one hell of a football game. And Tennessee and Josh Heupel pissed down their legs in this one because they still had the SEC championship to play for, and they didn't even show up. They got ran out of the building.
Yep. Speaking of...
Hold on, before we go, it's really kind of interesting to see Eli Drinkwitz get kind of pissy. Like, he's got something against Tennessee and Heupel. It was kind of cool to see that hatred and pettiness throughout the game. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the shit out of that. Little pat, little quick, like, go fuck yourself.
Oklahoma State does what Oklahoma State does is when they're actually having a good season, they decide to piss down their legs.
Yep, completely shit the bed.
To UCF.
I didn't see this
45-3.
Mile away. You know, these guys are in Big 12 contention, and they just absolutely shit the bed. I don't even know where to begin. USC has some gnarly uniforms, though. That blue, that looks really good. Other than that, you know, John Rice Plumlee had a nice game. Kid from right here in LaGrange. Kobe Hudson with a touchdown reception. Yeah, dude, that was... I mean, we watched Oklahoma State play Oklahoma last week in Bedlam and beat them and looked pretty good doing it. Looked dominant fashion. And I wonder if maybe their bus broke down and they just hired some like high school team to put their uniform on. It was bad. It was real bad.
They don't deserve their ranking.
No. Nope.
Kansas lose to Texas Tech 16-13.
Shocker. Didn't see any of this though.
No. Oklahoma bounced back and knocks off West Virginia 59-20.
I watched a little bit of this game and I was just shaking my head like, it was a great game by Oklahoma. Dylan Gabriel looked fantastic. It's kind of weird though. They've lost a couple games and they do this. It's like, where was this kind of performance? You know, last week.
Yeah.
You know, it's just so weird sometimes how teams can look so promising and then all of a sudden hit a speed bump, and that speed bump turns into another speed bump, and then they kind of right the ship, and by then it's too late.
Over.
You know.
Yeah. LSU knocked off Florida 52-35. Jaden Daniels had another great day.
Jaden Daniels had an amazing day. Just basically cemented him going to New York at least. I don't think he's going to win the Heisman, but cemented him going to New York. Florida, they had some fight in them. I'll give Florida some credit. They had some fight in them. Just like Washington, you know, the best players on the team are the youngsters. I don't think you need to fire in Napier or anything like that. This is a really bad season. They're probably not going to go to a bowl. And I think actually it's solidified. They're definitely not going to go to a bowl, but
they'll be fine.
They had some fight in a handful of games, and I'll give them credit. They never gave up.
Right. Speaking of a team that's probably not going to be bowl eligible, Colorado Buffaloes, they lost to Arizona 34-31. I think they just got into with the Pac-12 being so good this year, they're just running up and bust all everything.
Yeah, I mean, they're 4-6. It's their fourth straight loss. They started the season 2-0. Things looked promising, and then they kind of started to struggle. I'm not surprised. I honestly thought, though, with the amount of points they can put up, I thought they maybe would win a game like this, and they should have. I mean, I don't say they should have. They were in it, and I think that they're going to be in some games. They might luck out, win another one, but the way it looks, I don't think they're going to be bowl eligible.
But if any event, at least they're relevant and they are better than they were last year.
Yeah, they might be one of those teams that like 5-7. They might get one of those bowl invitations because number one, it's Colorado right now. Everyone's going to tune in to watch that game.
Right.
It's an extra game. You can see Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders, hold up the watch thing, whatever the hell he does, and see Dion. Wouldn't shock me if they were one of those teams that got that bowl bid when they're technically not eligible.
Right. Let's see. Iowa knocks off Rutgers 20-0. Rutgers played well last week against Ohio State, and what do? They got beat by Ohio State twice.
Yeah, and this game was a snoozer. Didn't watch anything, but I just kept seeing the highlights of people punting.
Yeah. No, Tulane knocked off Tulsa 24-22.
Tulane's a good football team.
Yeah.
Oh, excuse me. Yeah, they're a good football team. I didn't see the highlights of this North Carolina Duke game. I did see the score. I'm going to watch the highlights when I get back. This is the only game, basically from yesterday, that I wasn't able to see anything of. Looks like Drake May had a huge day passing. I want to see. I just want to see how that score happened.
Yeah.
47-45, 2 OTs. That's the only game I missed from yesterday.
Yeah. And then you got the Kansas State-Baylor game. Kansas State beat Baylor 59-25.
Kansas State looks good. I like them. They play solid football. Yeah. Clemson knocked off Georgia Tech, who's been riding high last few games and put up a bunch of points. Georgia Tech scored a couple of garbage time touchdowns. The game really wasn't all that close.
That's really it.
Illinois had a nice win. Nice high-scoring game for Illinois.
Yeah.
It was a good week of football all around. Really kind of shocked Nebraska dropped another one. I mean, they were one win away from bowl eligibility a couple weeks ago, and I think they've lost 2, maybe 3 in a row.
Well, guess it's time to look at next week's games.
Yeah,
if it ever comes up.
Second to last week of the season, which I believe for most of the SEC is Cupcake Saturday. I know Alabama's playing a cupcake before they go and play Auburn. At least I believe that's the case.
Yeah. Well, action starts Tuesday night with Toledo at Bowling Green. You can get a ticket for $16. Western Michigan, Northern Illinois, 7 o'clock.
Ticket for $3. You just walk in and see them. I'm sure they'll just let you in.
Let's see.
What's $3 really going to do?
Yeah. Boston College and Pittsburgh Thursday night.
That Friday night game, though, 10:30, Colorado, Washington State.
It'll be an interesting matchup.
Yep, I'll be watching most of that. We'll see if I can stay awake for the entire thing.
The Oregon-Arizona State game hasn't been announced yet.
Utah, Arizona, same thing, but that's some pretty good. Michigan and Maryland, there's some decent games right there. Yeah, look at that. Chattanooga at Alabama. They always play a cupcake before Auburn, and I'm not going to dog them because every SEC team plays like 2 cupcakes a year. Most of them play them in the beginning of the year. What I will say is I think this is a kind of horseshit because you're basically playing a cupcake team to kind of get your guys healthy. They don't have to play half the dudes in this game. They're just going to get healthy for Auburn and then go play Georgia in the SEC championship game. I think that's kind of a bummer. Everybody else is going to end up playing 2 conference games or 2 Power 5 games to go to that championship. Yeah. But you look at University of Louisiana Monroe is going to Ole Miss. Rutgers is going to Penn State. That Louisville-Miami game could be an interesting game.
Could be.
See if Miami can kind of try to right the ship a little bit against Louisville, which I don't really think they deserve that 11 ranking.
Yeah. Texas A&M against Abilene Christian.
Yep, and they'll be with a new coach. Yeah. They fired Jimbo today. Word on the street is that they fired him because they know the guy they want, and they wanted to get their opportunity before anybody else fires their coach. We got Georgia at Tennessee, 3:30 matchup. This game, I thought Georgia was in danger of losing. I was kind of convinced this could be a really tough game for them. I still think it will be, but after what I saw yesterday at Tennessee, once you kind of get on them a good bit and then start to stop their run, I think Tennessee has a chance here. If things get out of control, they can fold pretty quickly. Yeah. It's in Neyland, which will help them out. I think by the second quarter, Georgia has this unless they don't bring their A game. But there's nothing that I've seen the last few weeks to suggest that Georgia's not going to bring their A game.
I think they'll be fine. They'll show up. Notre Dame's got Wake Forest at 3:30.
Sam Hartman's old team coming to town. Notre Dame's on a free fall at the moment. Let's see what they can do against Sam's old team. Illinois at Iowa. I'll be watching that game. Jerry, our brother-in-law, is a big Illinois fan, and I think they have a chance to beat Iowa. If maybe they can score more than 10 points and not let Iowa return punt for a touchdown on you or a pick six. Illinois has a good chance.
Yeah. Let's see what else we got.
There's another one here. North Carolina at Clemson. That'd be a great game.
Yep. UCLA at USC, 3:30.
Yep.
Let's see. Minnesota at Ohio State. Oklahoma State, Houston.
Anybody.
Yeah. Florida State against North Alabama.
Yeah. Look at Florida State coming on the cupcake.
Washington
versus Oregon State. That'd be a good game. Then you got Florida at Missouri. That'd be a pretty good game. Sam Pittman is on the hot seat. At least they're probably going to get a win against Florida International. You got Kentucky at South Carolina, which is kind of a battle of the disappointments in the SEC East.
You got Kansas State against Kansas.
That Kentucky-South Carolina game could be interesting because I believe South Carolina is fighting for bowl eligibility, and Kentucky's had a really disappointing year. I know that they had higher hopes than what they're at now. I don't think Devin Leary was the answer for them. This Nebraska-Wisconsin game should be a good one. This game that definitely both teams could win. Nebraska's fighting for bowl eligibility. Texas at Iowa State. That could be a trap game for Texas. Cupcake City, LSU's at home against Georgia State.
I'm hearing rumors that Mark Stoops may be getting ready to bounce himself. This might be his last chance to get a bigger name, bigger ticket program.
Yeah, if he doesn't, he's stuck.
Yeah.
He'll be the Kentucky coach forever, and I think he'll be fine.
Yeah.
I don't see him leaving. I really don't, because I don't think anybody thinks he's going to bring them a national championship. I think there's other guys that most everybody wants. I kind of feel Stoops is and you're right, I think he missed his window.
Right.
I just think that he's now stuck. He's like Mark Richt. He's stuck. Until they've had enough, I think he's there.
Well, I guess that concludes this week's slate of games.
Yeah,
we'll do it again next week.
Maybe by next week we'll know who the new Texas A&M coach is. I'm not sure if we're going to hear before the season starts, or the end of the season rather. But you don't fire a guy with games left, games remaining, unless you either already know the guy you want and it's kind of already set in stone. You've signed the contracts kind of behind the scenes, or you're looking to be the first team looking for a new coach to kind of get a leg up on everybody else before they start firing the guys. So we'll see what happens. But 2 more weeks left of the regular season. It's kind of sad. I want more games.
Well, you know how it is.
Yeah, right.
All good seasons all come to an end.
Yep.
But the games get more important going forward. Well, you guys have a great week, and we'll do it again Sunday.
See it.